Have you ever sat in a meeting and heard someone say they need to circle back to ideate some low-hanging fruit while we move the needle on our North Star metrics? And you're sitting there thinking, what did they just say? Did they actually communicate anything meaningful? Or did they just throw a bunch of business buzzwords into a blender and hit puree? Welcome to the dystopian nightmare that is modern corporate jargon. I'm talking about the linguistic virus that has infected every boardroom, every Slack channel, and every email subject line in America. We're living through an epidemic of meaningless corporate speak, and honestly, it's gotten completely out of control. But here's what's really wild about this whole situation. Corporate jargon isn't just annoying. It's not just some harmless quirk of office culture that we can laugh off. This stuff is actively destroying communication, wasting billions of dollars, and turning smart, capable humans into walking, talking corporate zombies who've forgotten how to speak like actual people. And I know what you're thinking, Johnny. This is just how business works. People have always talked like this in offices. But that's where you're wrong. What we're experiencing right now is unlike anything we've seen before in the history of workplace communication. The sheer volume, the complexity, the complete detachment from reality has reached levels that would make George Orwell spin in his grave. So in this video, I'm going to take you on a journey through the twisted world of corporate jargon. We're going to explore how it started, why it's spreading like wildfire, and most importantly, why it's become one of the most destructive forces in modern business. I've spent months researching this topic, interviewing linguistics experts, business leaders, and employees who are drowning in this linguistic quicksand every single day. But first, let me paint you a picture of just how bad things have gotten. Last month, I received an email from a Fortune 500 company. I'm not kidding when I tell you this email contained zero meaningful information despite being 3 paragraphs long. It was pure corporate jargon soup. They wanted to leverage synergistic opportunities to optimize our value proposition while maintaining a customer-centric approach to scalable solutions. Translation? They wanted to sell me something, but they were too afraid to say it plainly. This isn't just happening in emails. Walk into any corporate office in America right now, and you'll hear conversations that sound like they're being conducted by aliens who learned English from a business school textbook. People don't have problems anymore. They have pain points. They don't work together. They collaborate cross-functionally. They don't make decisions. They align on actionable insights to drive strategic outcomes. And here's the thing that really gets me. These aren't stupid people. These are intelligent, educated professionals who, outside of work, speak perfectly normal English. But the moment they step into that office, it's like they're possessed by the spirit of a management consultant from hell. But why? Why has this happened? How did we get to a point where grown adults are afraid to say, we need to fix this problem, and instead say, we need to ideate scalable solutions to address this challenge vector? The answer is more disturbing than you might think, and it reveals something dark about how power works in modern organizations. Corporate jargon isn't an accident. It's not just lazy communication. It's a deliberate system of exclusion, obfuscation, and control that serves the interests of people who benefit from keeping communication unclear. No. Think about it this way. When someone uses plain English, they're vulnerable. They're saying exactly what they mean, which means you can hold them accountable for their words. But when someone hides behind corporate jargon, they've created a protective shield of meaninglessness. If their strategic initiative to optimize operational efficiency fails, well, what did they actually promise? Nothing specific enough to be held accountable for. This is why executives love this stuff. Corporate jargon is the linguistic equivalent of a get-out-of-jail-free card. It allows people to sound important and knowledgeable while saying absolutely nothing that could come back to haunt them later, and it gets worse. This linguistic virus has created an entire industry of people whose job is essentially to translate normal human communication into corporate gibberish and back again. We have consultants who get paid thousands of dollars to help companies optimize their messaging strategy and align their communication frameworks. We have entire departments dedicated to change management, whose primary function seems to be making simple concepts sound impossibly complex. I talked to Sarah, a marketing director at a tech company, who told me about a meeting she attended last week. The agenda item was listed as synergizing cross-platform engagement metrics to maximize customer journey optimization. The actual topic? They wanted to figure out why people weren't clicking on their website buttons. 6 people spent 2 hours in that meeting. 6 people with college degrees, with mortgages, with families, with real responsibilities, spent 120 minutes of their finite lives discussing button clicks using language so convoluted that half the participants left confused about what they were supposed to do next. Sarah calculated that those 2 hours cost the company roughly $3,000 in salaries alone. $3,000 to discuss website buttons. And this happens thousands of times every day across corporate America. But here's where it gets really insidious. Corporate jargon doesn't just waste time and money. It actually changes how people think. When you're forced to communicate in this artificial language all day, every day, it starts to rewire your brain. You begin to think in these abstract, meaningless terms. You lose the ability to communicate directly and honestly, even outside of a work. I've seen this happen to friends of mine, smart, articulate people who used to speak with clarity and passion about their work. Now they talk about driving value through innovative solutions, instead of saying, "I helped solve a customer's problem." The jargon has invaded their identity, and this brings us to perhaps the most troubling aspect of this whole phenomenon. Corporate jargon isn't just changing how we communicate at work. It's changing who we are as people when we spend 8, 10, 12 hours a day speaking in this artificial language. We start to lose touch with our authentic selves. The data on this is actually shocking. Studies show that employees who work in jargon-heavy environments report higher levels of stress, lower job satisfaction, and decreased sense of purpose in their work. They feel disconnected from their colleagues, confused about their responsibilities, and frustrated by their inability to communicate effectively. But the most damning statistic I found in my research: companies that use high levels of corporate jargon are 23% less productive than companies that prioritize clear communication. 23%. That's not a rounding error. That's the difference between thriving and struggling in competitive markets. So how did we get here? How did American business culture become so infected with this meaningless corporate speak that we're literally making ourselves less effective at the thing we're supposedly trying to optimize? The story begins in the 1980s, during the rise of management consulting firms like McKinsey, Bain, and Boston Consulting Group. These firms needed to justify their astronomical fees, so they created an entire vocabulary designed to make simple business concepts sound revolutionary and complex. They couldn't just say, "Sell more products." That's too obvious, too simple for a company paying millions in consulting fees. Instead, they had to leverage core competencies to capture market share through strategic positioning initiatives. And it worked. Corporate executives ate this stuff up because it made them feel sophisticated, like they were part of some elite club that understood business at a level mere mortals couldn't comprehend. The jargon became a status symbol, a way to signal that you belonged in the C-suite. But then something interesting happened. The middle managers who sat in meetings with these consultants started adopting the language. They figured if the executives and expensive consultants were talking this way, they should too. And the junior employees who wanted to get promoted started mimicking their managers. Before long, corporate jargon had spread through the entire organizational hierarchy like a linguistic pandemic. MBA programs made it worse. Business schools started teaching students that this was how professional communication worked. They created entire courses on strategic communication and executive presence that were essentially training grounds for corporate jargon. Students learned that saying, "I don't know," was career suicide, but saying, "I'll need to conduct further analysis to provide actionable insights," was professional excellence. And then the internet happened. Suddenly, this jargon wasn't confined to conference rooms and quarterly reports. It invaded LinkedIn posts, company websites, job descriptions, and even casual workplace Slack messages. The barrier to entry for spreading corporate nonsense dropped to zero, and the floodgates opened. Here's what's really messed up about this evolution. The original purpose of language is to transmit ideas clearly from one person to another. But corporate jargon does the exact opposite. It obscures meaning, creates confusion, and makes simple concepts seem impossibly complex. We've created a form of communication whose primary function is to prevent communication. Take the phrase, right-sizing the organization. That's corporate speak for firing people. But why can't we just say firing people? Because that sounds harsh, it sounds human, it acknowledges that real people with families and mortgages are losing their jobs. Right-sizing makes it sound like a mathematical optimization, something clean and rational rather than devastating and personal. This is the dark heart of corporate jargon. It's designed to dehumanize everything it touches. Customers become user personas. Employees become human resources, or human capital. Problems become challenges, or opportunities. Failure becomes learnings, or pivot points. But the real victims here aren't the executives who speak this language fluently. They're insulated by their salaries and stock options. The real victims are the millions of employees who have to navigate this linguistic maze every single day while trying to do actual work. I spoke with Marcus, a software engineer at a major tech company. He told me about a project that was delayed by 3 months because nobody could understand what they were supposed to be building. The requirements document was written entirely in corporate jargon. Terms like omni-channel customer experience optimization and scalable user engagement frameworks filled page after page, but nowhere did it actually specify what the software needed to do. Marcus and his team spent weeks in meetings trying to decode the document. They brought in product managers, business analysts, even the VP of engineering. Everyone nodded knowingly during discussions, afraid to admit they had no idea what anyone was talking about. It wasn't until a frustrated intern finally asked, "Can someone please explain what we're actually building here?" that the truth came out. Nobody knew. 3 months, dozens of highly paid professionals, hundreds of hours of meetings, all because someone was afraid to write, "We need an app that helps customers find our products faster." And this isn't an isolated incident. This is happening everywhere, all the time. Corporate jargon has created a system where clarity is seen as weakness and complexity is mistaken for intelligence. We've built organizations where the person who can say the least while using the most words is considered the most valuable. But here's what's really keeping me up at night about this whole situation. We're not just talking about workplace inefficiency anymore. This linguistic virus is starting to leak out into other areas of society. Politicians now sound like corporate executives. Nonprofit organizations write mission statements that could have been generated by a business jargon AI. Even schools are adopting this language, talking about student success outcomes instead of teaching kids. We're creating a society where authentic human communication is becoming extinct, replaced by this artificial corporate dialect that serves no one except the people who profit from confusion and complexity. And the younger generation is growing up thinking this is normal. They're entering the workforce already fluent in meaningless business speak because they think that's what professionalism looks like. They've never experienced a workplace where people say what they mean and mean what they say. So here's my challenge to everyone watching this video. The next time you're in a meeting and someone starts spouting corporate jargon, be the person who asks for clarification. Be the one who says, "I'm sorry, can you explain that in plain English?" Don't be embarrassed that you don't understand. Be proud that you still care about actual communication. And if you're in a position of leadership, start modeling clear communication. When your team sees you speaking like a human being instead of a management consulting robot, you'll give them permission to do the same. You'll be amazed how much more productive your meetings become when people can actually understand what everyone else is saying. Look, I know this seems like a small thing. I know it's easy to dismiss corporate jargon as just another annoying part of office culture, but language shapes thought, and thought shapes action. When we allow meaningless corporate speak to dominate our workplaces, we're not just wasting time and money, we're losing our humanity. The good news is that this is completely fixable. We created this problem, and we can solve it. All it takes is people who are willing to speak clearly, think clearly, and demand clarity from others. Because at the end of the day, the most radical thing you can do in corporate America today is simply say what you mean. Thanks for watching, and please, for the love of all that is holy, Stop leveraging synergistic opportunities to optimize your value propositions. Just tell us what you're actually trying to do. We'll all be better for it.